Hey, I'm Ducey. I'm an alcoholic. I walked up and somebody said, "Who's Warren speaking tonight?" And I looked up here and I seen Warren as the speaker, and then I seen the introducer as Leonard, and I was like, "Well, who the hell is Leonard that's introducing me?" I didn't think of Lynn. I was like, what the hell is Leonard going to say about me? Anyway, hey, I'm glad to be here this evening. Going to get up here and try to tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and how it is today. And I was telling Lynn a couple of days ago at work, my guy didn't get that part out of here in the beginning. This is the first meeting I walked into when I got out of treatment. My sobriety date's April 29th of 2002. And I got out of the old treatment center down there in Wilmington on Memorial Day, 2002. And the old fiance I had at the time come and pick me up. And I remember her saying, "Well, them old Pew boys are having an old pig picking and barbecue over there that day, and they want you to come on by. And we ain't got to drink nothing, but we'll just go hang out with them." And I remember that 2.5 hour ride back from Wilmington, I contemplated that the whole way, and I think you look back at sobriety and you look back at this time in here, and I think about the different decisions I made along the way of once I made it to get sobered up, of moving away from here and moving down in the recovery house. But I sit back and think about that, probably that one important decision that Monday of getting out of that treatment, coming down here and thinking, should I go over there and hang out with the old boys and check them out? I didn't plan on drinking, and and what I did, I look back at that decision, and I made my decision to come to my first AA that meeting night outside of that treatment center, and I come over here on that Monday night on Memorial Day, and I was telling Lynn, I was down there in that treatment center, and I was beat and I was tired and I was ready to get sobered up, and I was about to die. And of course I was in there with about 50 other ones, and I think me and about 3 of the 50 was serious about getting sober and wasn't anybody else, and I just, they wasn't getting sober the way I wanted them to, or trying as hard, and I remember going in there and sitting down with one of them counselors. I had been in there a couple of weeks at that time, and that counselor, and just complaining about everybody wasn't serious about getting sober or something. And she opened up that old big book back in the day on 449 and read that acceptance passage in there, about nothing happens in God's world by mistake, and I remember taking that and going, "Oh yeah, I got some level 2 AA right here." I learned that in the treatment center there, and I was like, "That's some special stuff there." And didn't nobody say, I come on back down here that night and come into my first AA meeting, and we were over there on at the other spot then, and we split up into a couple of meetings, and we were all downstairs down there, and I think there was a group of newcomers meeting or something with about 10 or so, and old Steve, and I think Bradley might have been in there, and a couple of them other old guys that are gone now, and we were talking about something. They were going around the circle, and they were talking about sponsorship or something, and it come around to me, and I whipped out that old acceptance passage. Didn't have a damn thing to do with what they were talking about, but I whipped out that old acceptance passage on it because I thought I knew some AA stuff, and old smart ass Steve over there said, "Well, just keep on coming back, boy," But anyway, I think about that right there. I think about that, and I think about this just coming to that meeting that night. That was the probably that first smart decision I made in sobriety, getting out of that treatment center and deciding to come to an AA meeting that night instead of going out and hanging out with the old boys. Because that's generally, even them last couple of years when I didn't want to drink no more, I still wanted to go sit down there at Brooks and Sports Page and hang out on them old bar stools and just hang out with the crowd. I didn't want the consequences that come from drinking the liquor and doing the dope, but I didn't want to give up the lifestyle, and it's like they say, I kept hanging around the barbershop long enough, and I kept getting the haircuts, you know what I mean? And but anyway, I grew up down in Pine Bluff, middle class family. Actually, my mom's coming to hear me speak tonight. I don't think she's heard me speak in quite a few years. So, but anyway, so grew up down there in the middle class family, and probably had everything we needed, not everything I wanted, and I run around with a little group of boys down there in Pine Bluff, and about half or all of them that I run around with, they're all members of AA now. I don't know if it was just something in the water, or hell, we all had the same dead end. We didn't know it, you know what I mean? But we all wound up alcoholics, But But we run around growing up down there and running around together. And, I can remember being a kid and, sneaking a beer out the refrigerator and popping the top on it. And, I can remember snagging a cigarette and, hanging out there in the woods with the boys, and we'd be puffing on old cigarette and passing it around like we were smoking a joint and hacking and coughing and, and I don't remember when I took my first drink, but I remember my old man. I remember my old man telling the story. We had if you lived around here and knew, we had old crazy ass neighbor that lived behind us back there. His name was Bunny Wallace, and he was our neighbor in the back. And the old man would talk about, I guess he said I was about 6 or 7. I don't really remember much of that, but about 6 or 7, and he always planted a garden in the summertime. And he'd sit out there and look out the kitchen window, and I'd go out there in the afternoons and I'd pick a couple of tomatoes and I'd go on back through the woods back there. And he said he watched me one day. I picked them tomatoes and I went on back through the woods back to Bunny's over there, and he went back through the woods and watched him. Bunny would trade him them tomatoes, and he'd give me a little old Miller pony they used to drink back in the day. And so I was back there sitting on an old log drinking one of them little Miller ponies, But I do remember being probably about 10 years old, and I remember the old man, and they had an old crowd over there at the house, and I was raised up in this old honky-tonk bar down there in Hoffman called the Pink Elephant, and I can remember as a kid hanging out in that old beer joint in there, and an old man in there shooting pool, and they had a couple old pool tables and a pinball machine, and a couple of them old bottles of the old pickles, pig feet, and the pickled eggs. It was just one of them old dark, seedy joints, but I remember hanging out in there and playing them pool tables, and I remember a lot of them characters that my old man run around in there, and I remember they were all over at the house. We were living down there in Palm Bluff, and they were all over there at the house one night playing cards, sitting at the kitchen table, and I remember he would, if he was out there working in the yard or something, he'd send me to go get him a beer or something like that. I'd get to pop the top on it and take a old swig of it or something like that, And I remember I got him a beer out of the refrigerator, and I remember popping the top on it, and I remember taking an old sip of it and giving it back to him. And I remember going over there and getting it back again 2 or 3 times, and just aggravating the hell out of him. And I remember him looking at me and saying, "Boy, one of these days I'm going to take you out and let you drink all them beers you can stand to drink till your head hurts so bad you don't want them no more." And it took about 20 years to get to that point, but that day did come, But growing up there in Pine Bluff and that crowd I run around with, man, you hang around enough these AA meetings and you listen to enough speakers, you hear most of us got the all same story, Other than that little crowd that I fit in right there, they talk about never feeling a part of or feeling less than, I remember being as a kid, I did get on that old CAT test they used to give us back in the day, and they sent me over to Pinehurst over there and put me in the old gifted and talented class over there, I can tell you I was probably the least gifted and talented of any of them in there at the time. But I remember it seemed like most of the kids I went to school with over there, parents were doctors or lawyers or something. They were all seemed well to do, and I just remember feeling a little less than, even at that age right there, but hanging around that crowd there in Pine Bluff, that was my old crowd. But, you put me over there in school, even though I did good in school, where sometimes it's just school wasn't for me, I just wasn't interested in it. And I surely didn't do all I could have done. I did enough to get by, or at least for a while, but I remember getting high school, and I remember taking my first drink to get drunk. I remember Mom and Dad and several couples used to have an old beach music club down here, right there on Broad Street back years ago, back in the early 80s. And they closed that down, and I remember we just had a bunch of liquor down there at the house in a closet down there. And I remember one of my old buddies' parents went out of town. I guess he was about 15 years old, just got to high school. One of my buddies' parents went out of town, and I remember stealing 2 or 3 half gallons of all the different kinds of liquor and some fists and whatever was down there. And it took a bunch of that stuff out there that night, and I remember we didn't know what we were doing. We were drinking all kinds of wild concoctions, but I remember getting drunk, and I remember getting sick and puking all over the place, but I remember it was a good time, and I tell you what else I found out that night. I found out that I liked that, And I found me a crowd that I fit in right there. There was probably about 10 or 12 of us out there, and we all got drunk, had a good time, and and we enjoyed it. And I found me a crowd that I felt like I fit in with, and that's what we started doing, and generally it was pretty innocent at the beginning, and it really wasn't too hard to remember. Back then, drinking age was 18, and then they moved it to 19 for about a year. So, hell, we all knew somebody, a senior in high school or something, that could, or just getting out of school, that could buy us beer back then. So, so it wasn't very hard to get, and we'd go out on the weekends, and somebody having a party, we'd go to that. If nobody having a party, we'd go sit out in the woods and drink beer, it didn't take long after we started drinking them beers that we started smoking them joints, and it didn't take long after starting to drink them beers and smoking them joints to start getting in trouble, in the beginning, of course, it was simple little things, possessions and underage drinking and things they'd give you old pink slip for and send you on home back in the day, but, just like the progression of alcoholism, so there was the progression of them troubles, and, then I started getting in trouble and DWIs and just, and just a handful, and I remember being 16, 17 and getting in trouble and defiant. Knew a hell of a lot more than my mom and dad did at that time, and, you couldn't tell me nothing, and I did kind of what I wanted to, and, and got in some trouble and been getting in trouble and then wasn't doing good in school. And, but I remember being about 16 and me and a couple old boys went down to Rockingham to the old Rock for the weekend and went down there and poured the old Western and come home that Saturday night about blistered. And, of course, Mom and Dad wasn't very happy. And, the old man, I remember he jumped on me and had me pinned down at the bottom of the steps and working on me pretty good. And, and then I remember they gathered me up. We come up here to the police station, the old police station before they tore it down. I remember sitting in that police station. They were going to try to have me committed for just psychiatry or just being crazy, and so we sit over there in the police station for a while. And then we went over to the hospital, sit over there till probably, 2 in the morning waiting on a psychiatrist to show up. And, I can't remember. He come in and asked something. He threatened to kill y'all or yourself in the last whatever hours. And, the answer was no. And he was like, so we can't do much with them. So, I remember we left out of there when we were going home. And I remember we pulled over on the side of the road down there at the old Aberdeen Florist. And I just remember the old man said, get out. See, I don't care where you go, just don't come out to my house. And he put me out on the side of the road. And, and I remember going back up to the next town or going back up to Aberdeen. I had a couple old boys that, hey, they'd already got kicked out of their house too. So I went back up there and shacked up with one of them for a couple of days and then, quit school and went to work, started building houses. And, me and another old boy went down the old Pine Bluff Lake Road down there and got us an old rundown trailer and moved in there. And I was 16 years old, quit school and working. And, I'd go to work every day and I'd come home at 4 o'clock and there'd be 15 of them ganged up in there. And, the party was on. We sitting there and we drank liquor and smoked dope every day in there. I think we stayed in there about a year. And we never did get enough oil to turn the heat on in there, but we stayed drunk and high every day in that place, and I just kind of went through the process from there through my teenage years, and I'd get in trouble, and I'd get my old girlfriend, I'd settle down. I was somewhat a little more calm if I had a girlfriend than I was when I was running around out there with them old wild asses I run around with, but and I'd go along there and I'd do all right for 6 or 8 months, and then the bottom fall out. Hell, I'd get in a fight or something and get locked up, or assault on a police officer, or DWIs. I think I had 3 DWIs before I was ever old enough to drink. And back then it was a little easier to pay them out. Back in the day, but and when I'd get them DWIs, they send me to these old AA meetings over here. And I'd come in here and listen to y'all up here talking Spanish and sitting there for about 3 hours long and go, man, when the hell is this meeting going to be over with, and have to get my old paper signed and, and of course I wasn't ready to get sober, and But and I kind of went through that spell, and along the way, I quit and I started building houses and, started running framing crews and building houses. And I went and got my contractor's license when I was 22 and started building houses, and actually did pretty good considering how much drinking and dope I did, and kind of built a little business and made some money. And, and like any good alcoholic and drug addict, the more money I made, the more drinking I did, and the more dope I got, and the bigger my ego got, and I went through probably my mid-20s again, just drinking and getting high. And I remember being probably about 25 or so, and I've been running hard and doing a lot of that dope for a good bit. I remember Mom over there worked in VR for years and years around here, worked with a bunch of alcoholics and drug addicts, helping them out, getting out of prison, getting jobs, getting in these recovery houses and stuff. And I remember I'd been on about 3 or 4 day tear and ain't been to bed, and went and knocked on her door one morning about 4 o'clock in the morning, and was like, man, I got to get some help. I'm gonna die. I'm getting ready to die if I don't get some help. And I remember she sent me over here to Recovery Associates, and I went in there and sit down with old dude Ricky and met with him for about a month. And he wanted me, first thing he said was, we want you to go down to Wilmington down there and get in one of them treatment centers. I was like, dude, I got 15 houses I'm building right now. I can't leave for 30 days and go down there, and I remember one of them old smart ass sayings you hear in here, anything you put before your sobriety, you'll lose it. And I remember saying, yeah, I hear you, but I ain't leaving to go to 30 days in no treatment center, and they made a lot of them suggestions. Hey, go to AA. Maybe quit hanging out in them bars down there. Quit running around with them old drug dealing buddies you're running around with, And, I was sick and I was tired, but I wasn't that sick and tired, and I wasn't quite ready to give it up. You know what I mean? And that's what I did. I wanted to still live the lifestyle. I didn't want the consequences, but I wanted to hang out on the old bar stool with the boys and run around with that crowd, and that's what I did. And, for several more years, hey, it was fine. I mean, from probably 15 to 25, I had a lot of good times drinking and doing all that other stuff. And I got a lot of trouble, and, it was just all par for it. Everybody I run around with did the same thing. We all got in trouble, and we all drank and did the same stuff, and it was just kind of, like I talked about in that old big book, kind of becomes your only normal way of life, and then I'd say from there, though, the old good times and the bright light started dimming out, and probably them last 3 years of my drinking, I sit there 1,000 mornings, I bet, and watch that sun come up with a bottle of liquor and a bag of dope, and said, today's the day. Man, I got to do something different. I can't do this no more. I'm dying. And I'd swear I'm done today, and I'm gonna limp through this day. Ain't been to bed yet. Try to get into work and check on stuff, and come about 4:30, 5 o'clock, the pure insanity of I'd stop by one of them old watering holes down there just to get one cold beer. Hell, I never one time walked in one of them bars at 4 in the afternoon and said, give me a beer, boys. I can't wait to watch the sun come up tomorrow morning. But, it was just repeated time after time, that insanity of that first drink. I never planned it, but that's what happened time after time again, and, I sit there and think about them, and before it all got gone, I went out there and West End and bought me a big old piece of land and built me a big old house and bought me motorcycles and boats and Corvettes and just, I was trying to fill that old hole in my soul, drinking liquor and just buying all the dope I could do, and it didn't matter. All that stuff that I just thought, if I could just get this, it would be all right. I can find that peace and contentment, and it wasn't there. It didn't matter. I went through every dime I made trying to find some peace and contentment through toys or women or booze and dope, and that old black hole in my soul just kept getting darker and darker and darker, and I just remember, I remember there at the end, that old guilt and shame of when you're living that way. I think about how many mama's birthdays, and Christmases, and Thanksgivings and, all those that, hell, I went out to get a cold beer a day or two before and never even made it home for Christmases and Thanksgivings and whatnot. I can remember many times held up over in some dim old motel room or some old damn run-down trailer picking out the blinds on Christmas Day. Watch the sun come up and watch the sun go down. And never even be able to show up. And I just remember being in the rat race of that old guilt and shame. I can remember disappearing for days on end and being out there in that big old house. And, after anybody heard from me in a couple of days, they'd come out there and start knocking on the door and looking for me. And I remember having all the blinds closed and going in there and getting in the damn old walk-in closet and turning the lights off and just sitting in there waiting for them to go away, just waiting for everybody to get out of there, and, just because of the mess I was in, and the way I was living. And, I remember there at the end, you just kind of get to that point to where, I remember right before I got sobered up, my old man had called me one night about coming over and watching a ball game or something. And, by that time I done burned my way through the old house and all that stuff. And I was living in an old rundown rental house out there on Sandpit Road, probably 3 months behind, trying to keep from getting kicked out of that thing and, holding on for dear life. And, I remember the old man asking something about coming over there and watching a game or something. And I just told him a lie, just like anything else. No, I'm busy. I got somewhere to go. I wanted to be able to drink and do what I did, and I didn't want nobody bothering me, And, and I remember he had a stroke. He had a stroke next day or sometime overnight or something like that. And, I remember them putting him in the hospital and, going over to the hospital. And I remember he'd been in the hospital, I don't know, probably 2 weeks or something like that. And they were supposed to move him down in from the physical therapy part down, or from the hospital part down to the physical therapy part. I remember calling me up and going, son, can you go by and get my shaving kit, my underwear, and whatever. He said, I ain't got nothing since they brought me in here in the ambulance. And I remember saying, yeah, I'll go by and get all that stuff today. When I get out of work, I'll stop by and go grab it, and I'll bring it over to you this evening, And, I remember I had all plans on doing that. But I remember I was going to stop by that bar and get on one cold beer before I did that, And, I remember it like yesterday, just the next morning, 10, 11 o'clock, sitting over at some dude's house, drinking liquor and doing dope, ain't been to bed, and just old guilt and shame. And going, good Lord, I can't even do the little stuff, And, so... I guess about a week or two after that, it was his birthday, and we had a little birthday party. My brother come in town from Wilmington. We had a little birthday party for him over at the hospital over there. And then that night, me and my brother and quite a few of the other ones that come over there, my old fiance at the time, we all went out around here and run around these old bars all night and did the same old usual stuff we did, and of course did dope all night. And we went back down to that little rental house. I don't know what happened. We got some kind of fight down there that night, and I beat her up real bad, pulled a shotgun out, shot the house up. And, remember going in there briefly and just vaguely and sitting down in there and sticking that old shotgun under my chin. And just sitting there crying and trying to get enough courage up to pull the trigger on that thing. And, I don't know, by God's grace, I passed out, I guess, and I just remember, I think it was my mom and my brother come in and got the gun from me, and I just remember sitting there going, "Hey, take me down to that treatment center down there in Wilmington," But I remember saying, "We got to go right now." I got a bottle of liquor in there, and I got a bag of dope in my pocket, and I said, "I'm gonna do it all the way down there, but we got to go right now, because if I stop and you let me go to bed tonight, it'll be just like one of them other 1,000 mornings when I said I'm gonna do something different tomorrow." So. I was like, we got to go now. And that's what we did. We packed up, got in the car, and we went down to Wilmington, down there at that Wilmington Treatment Center. And I remember we went over there that next day to try to get in there, and they were full. But they said, if you come back tomorrow, we can get you in there, And so I remember my brother lived down there at the time, so I remember going back over to his house and going in there and laying down, taking a nap for a while. And then I remember coming to and thinking, boy, what the hell have I got myself into? How did I get down here and ain't got no ride and done promised I'm going to go in this treatment center? And, I was trying to figure out how the hell I was going to get my ass back home, And, needless to say, I did. I went in that treatment center the next day, and, that's where it all started. And, and all I can tell you was I mean, this time I've been to AA probably, half a dozen times through the years, and I was tired. That's all I can tell you. I was tired, and I was beat, and I was just ready to make a change, man. I didn't know what else to do. And for the first time, I listened to what the hell they told me to do in there. I went in that treatment center, and they told me what to do, and I listened. And I stayed in there that 28 days, and they gave me some knowledge about alcoholism. The best thing it did was it gave me a break. I ain't had from the first drink or drug that I picked up at 15 years old till I put it down. I'd come in here and quit drinking maybe a month before. I don't even know if I made it a month, but I never, when I quit drinking, I was either eating pills or smoking grass or doing something. I was never clean and sober for 30 days, So, it gave me it gave me a 28-day reprieve, and I remember sitting in there in about 2 weeks, and, I think God granted me that moment of clarity that it talks about, when I was just able to look back over the last 15 years of my life and see the hell everybody I run around with and everywhere I hung out and everything I did all revolved around drinking liquor and doing dope. I didn't run around with that crowd that I grew up with that didn't drink and do the things I did, and it was kind of like the big book talks about, especially there at the end. My world condensed down to a handful of drunks and drug addicts that lived the way I lived, but I did my 28 days in there, and I remember I got out, and I come home that Memorial Day, and I remember coming to AA around here, and back when I was a kid and growing up around here and running around them bars as a 17, 18-year-old with a fake ID and stuff. There was old wily veteran bouncer, an old mean-ass old Tim Sheffield. He's dead and gone now, but he run around these bars for many years, and I ain't seen Tim in years. Hell, I thought he was dead, and come to find out he'd been sober about 10 years when I got here, and he was hanging out in AA, And I remember I knew the way Tim lived, and I knew the things Tim did, and I seen the difference in Tim's life. I'd seen something had changed in him, and and I remember him telling me that simple, hey man, you come in here and do what we do, and if you don't, get on back out there and do what you've been doing. We don't want nothing from you other than help you out. And if you don't want it, maybe you ain't ready, get on back out there, I come in here and I was ready, and I for the first time, they said get a sponsor, and I got a sponsor, and I started the process, and, I moved back down to Wilmington. I moved in a recovery house down there, because really that's what I needed. I'll tell you, one, I was kind of running away because the old pride and ego and the shame. I'd made a mess of business and stuff around here, and owed some money and, business stuff and stuff like that. And, I come back here and finished up a job or two that was going on, and, I packed up and I moved down there in an old rundown recovery house, and I started the process. I got my old sponsor, and he told me to call him every day, and I called him. He told me to come see him once a week, and we're going to read that big book. And I went and seen him once a week, and we read that big book. And he said go to a meeting every day, and I went to a meeting every day. I listened, and it didn't take long for things to automatically get a little better. Generally it does when you ain't drinking, at least I wasn't spending all my money, and I wasn't hungover, and I wasn't getting in fights and all the other stuff that comes along with it, and things automatically got a little better. I remember there was an old timer, he's still down there on Needham. He's one of them old dudes, and old gruffy old dudes, and I remember telling him something about, man, this about my first 30 days, and I remember saying something about, man, this stuff works when you do it, don't it? And I remember he looked at me and said, that's right, boy. He said, when you drink enough liquor, you'll be able to hear the message, and how true that was. He didn't tell me how much liquor that was, but he said, when you drink enough liquor, you'll be able to hear the message, because the message has never changed from that first AA meeting that I walked into down there in that old Wilder building in a cloud of smoke back there. And when I was 15, 16 years old, it's come in here and you get you a sponsor and you work these 12 steps and you get you a home group. You read that big book, and you get sobered up, you help another alcoholic. That's what we do. And there ain't no level 2 AA. That was the message back then. And that was the message through, but I never wanted to do the things they told me to do. That's what some of you do. Come here and say, hey man, I want some help. They tell you to do all those things. You go, well, I don't want to do none of that. And then I couldn't figure out why I couldn't stay sober, But, so I did the simple things that they told me to do this time. And, I remember my biggest thing was just praying stuff and God stuff. That just wasn't, remember saying some little prayers around the table at dinner or something like that, but I wasn't spiritual and, no big faith in God or anything when I got here. I wasn't atheist. I wasn't going to argue with about God, but you just take that stuff and get on away from me over there. I don't want to hear nothing about it, and, I remember that was my biggest thing, man, asking that sponsor, man, what's this higher power y'all talking about? And God of my understanding, and how am I going to find that? I just didn't know, and, I remember he got me praying. He said, I want you to pray. You get up in the morning, you ask God to, he went and turned right on to 86 and 88 in that big book and said, here's your instructions for today, and this is how we do it. Upon awakening, you get up and you say your little prayers, you read your couple of little things in the book, and you think about your day ahead, and you stay sober all day and do what you got to do. And at the end of the day, if you stay sober, you thank God, and, I remember being in that old recovery house. I don't even think it had door locks and door handles on some of the doors, and I remember getting over there and trying to say old prayer and get my old leg pinned to the door over there. I didn't want nobody to walk in there and catch me praying, but I get down and I started praying, and, I remember I've been sober probably five months or so, and meeting that sponsor and going to them meetings, and I remember asking that sponsor, what about this praying stuff and all that, is it going to work? When's it going to start working? Is it going to work? And, his simple thing to me was, well, how long you been sober now? And I was like, about 5 months. He said, you ever been sober 5 months before? And I said, no. And he said, well, hell, there you have it. It's working for you, ain't it? And it's like the light bulb went off. I was like, yeah, I guess it is, and, but I worked through them 12 steps with him, and somewhere along the way it produced that spiritual change that it's talking about, or psychic change that it's talking about. I can't tell you what day it happened. I don't know. It's just a series of events along the way, but somewhere from working them 12 steps, in this gift of sobriety, the obsession to drink got removed, and my life certainly changed, and I went on through the 12 steps with him, and did the process, and started going out and trying to help other alcoholics, and it's certainly been a process in sobriety, I just think about from, first getting sober and I think about sobriety and how the path gets nearer. They talk about we come here and it's a broad highway, but the longer you stay sober, the nearer the path gets. I remember that first year of sobriety, I wasn't drinking no liquor and doing no dope, but I probably still wasn't very honest, telling some little lies and of course, still, you come here and you took my liquor and you took my dope, and my old fiance at the time, she stayed up here and we split up. So, first thing I had to do was find me a new higher power down there too, So I kind of went through the rooms of AA and the gym at the time trying to find me a new higher power, And of course that didn't work out too good for me either. But I think about the process of getting sober and then sitting down and starting other alcoholics. It's like I tell all these guys that I sponsor today. We come in here that first year or so of sobriety, and we take this gift in. I took it all in, and then my job is to give it back. And I'm a firm believer, and that's where the gifts I have today are from constantly trying to give it back. I got a lot of sponsees with anywhere from I think 16 or 17 years down to some guys I read the book with every week, and I think about the process of coming in here and getting sober, and the naive part of it of thinking, hell, there was a little group of it seemed like when I was a kid and here trying to get sobered up, it seemed like everybody was. I say there were probably 50 at that time. They seemed like there were 90, when I was 15, 16 and teenagers, you know what I mean? And I remember getting down there, and it seemed like there was a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds in sobriety down there, and I found me a little group that we all started running around together and going to AA meetings and going out to eat, and I started to feel a part of, and that's one of the big things in AA. It's like the old Cheer song. We like to go where they know our name, It's just like walking in all these old watering holes down here, and they walk in there, you walk in there, and everybody goes, Deuce, good to see you. Let me buy you beer. It ain't no different walking into AA meetings, and you want to feel a part of. I think about all them years before I got sober, I didn't feel a part of. I sit back there in the back, smoke cigarettes, and when that thing was over, I got my paper signed, and I went out the door. You know, I wasn't raising my hand and saying I'm new. And I wasn't talking to nobody, carrying on no conversation. I did what I had to do, and I didn't feel a part of, you know. And it talks about in that big book, you know, I hadn't fully conceded to my innermost self. And that part when it says about if you hadn't, your sobriety will be precarious, and of real happiness will be none at all. You know, I can remember sitting in AA meetings when I wasn't ready to get sober, and there ain't nothing fun at all about sitting in these meetings when you ain't ready to get sober, you know. But you know, I remember finding that little group down there, and we started hanging out, and I started feeling a part of, you know, and we just kind of went through the process, you know. But again, the naive of us thinking, you know, hell, we're all going to get sober and live happily ever after together. And you know, I've learned through the years of coming in here and steadily doing this, and I've watched a lot of them friends that got sobered up, and AA gave them that good life that it talks about. It takes you right on out of AA. You know, they got married, had some kids, maybe they started making money, they get busy, you know, and I've watched it 100 times, you know, and you know, I can tell you this. I mean, I probably 5 or 6 years ago, I think I was sober about 15 years at the time. You know, and you know, I kind of went through a spell. And, you know, most of them guys I sponsor, if their ass is on fire, the ones that's been sober for a while, they'll call me, and I see them at meetings. But the guys I was reading the big book with, a couple of them got drunk, and I didn't really pick nobody else up. And I kind of trudged along the path, you know, and you know, I just remember. I remember probably made more money than I ever made in my life that year. And you know, built a new house, wife, 3 kids, you know, and on the outside, everything looked great. You know, you would say, damn, he's got it going on, you know. But I just remember, you know, I kind of got away from AA for a little stretch. I did not, you know, I'd go about once a week or something like that. But, you know, then my mind was tainted too, and I'd go sitting there and listen to somebody share and go, good Lord, I wish he'd shut the hell up, you know. And I wasn't in tune to AA, you know. And I remember my 15-year chip, you know, my home group, and I was supposed to go pick it up, and I'm thinking, hell, I ain't going over there. I don't even feel like going over there, you know. And you know, I went along there, and that old pressure pot of life started building on me. I had an old boy in my old home group back in the day, and you know, that stress of life for us alcoholics, you know, started building on me, you know, and I wasn't spiritually fit. And you know, I remember, and that old boy used to say all the time, he said, well, when that old pressure pot of life gets on you, one of 2 things is going to bend, either your knees or your elbow, you know. And, you know, I remember I was just trudging through life, just driving that old square peg in that round hole every day, you know, and making money. You know, I'm out there making money, and that was my goal, was to make money, you know, and, you know, doing nothing spiritual. And, you know, that pressure pot of life got on me, you know, and I was miserable. And I remember laying in the bed on a Monday morning with the fear just gripping me, you know, and I couldn't even get out of bed of just the fear on me. I didn't want to go out and face the world. I didn't want to answer the telephone. I didn't want to talk to nobody, you know. You know, and I remember rolling out of bed and crying and getting down on my knees and saying a prayer, you know, and asking God for some help. Man, I got to have some help, you know. And you know, it's funny how God works, you know. That was on a Monday, and on a Wednesday I was supposed to come up here and meet a lady about building a house out in the horse country out there. So I went out there and meet her, and I start talking to her about building a house. And next thing you know, I find out she's from Wilmington. We talk about some of the same people, and I hear her mention her ex-husband's name, and I'd heard his name before in AA, so I mentioned this other guy, and come to find out, she'd been in AA for 30 years and was sober, and had moved up here, and she was out there at the VAST group on Wednesday night, you know, and we talked for a minute, and the next thing you know, she's like, well, I just joined the VAST group, and I'm chairing this month. Can you come out and speak for me next Wednesday night? I was like, holy shit. You know, here I am Monday, crying on the floor, asking for some help, and here this lady is asking me to speak at an AA meeting a couple of days later, you know what I mean? But, you know, and that's what it took of again, and I chaired a meeting last week at my home group, and that's what I needed. I needed that recommitment, or just that recommitment. You know, and that's what I found through the years of sobriety. You know, I do enough to stay sober. I'll do enough to stay sober, but I'm lazy. There's a lot more people I could probably help if I really took the time. I could help a lot more people. I could probably even do a little more service work, And I found I'll do enough to stay sober. I'll call my sponsor if my ass is on fire. I don't keep up with him regularly like I should, and that's what I learned. Just like I'll generally start that out at the beginning of every year. I'm gonna do a recommitment day. Hey, I'm gonna call my sponsor once a week. I'm gonna try to help some more people, and that's fine. And I generally do that for a while, and then, I always go to AA. I still go to meetings, but and I think more of my recommitment is to the spiritual side of things. I'm grateful every day that I don't have to pick up a drink no more. But I'm not grateful, unless I'm spiritually fit, I'm not grateful for the many gifts. I don't always sit there and think, man, I got 3 healthy kids that ain't sick. I got a beautiful wife. I got a roof over my head. I forget all that stuff sometimes, I got to the point sometimes where I think I expect it if I'm running on my own self-will. When I'm not living right, the first thing that pops in my head is I'm riding around Wrightsville Beach down there and I go, well, why the hell ain't I got a house over here on Wrightsville Beach, instead of being grateful for the house I got, and the family I got, So, I'm still wired. I'm still wired. Before I ever picked up my first drink, I was selfish and self-centered as a kid, and that's the way I am now. I'm impatient and I'm intolerant, and that didn't change none for me quitting drinking. I'm like that almost 22 years later. If I don't stay spiritually fit, I'll revert right back to the way I'm wired, and that's selfish and self-centered, And there's days that go along that there ain't a spiritual bone in my body. The best thing I can do is I know I'm powerless over alcohol, and I don't pick up a drink, but I don't help nobody, and I don't think of nobody else, And luckily, me and my wife are different. She's wired that way. I'm not. She's constantly thinking of others and them kids and how she can help somebody else, and and I revert back to, hey man, there's $1 out there in the street and I'm going to get one, and that's just the way I'm wired, and I can't change that without coming in here and staying centered in AA and trying to live these spiritual principles that gives me the quality of life I want. Even if I don't drink, I can tell you if I didn't come to an AA meeting again after today, I might not pick up a drink tomorrow, 6 months, 6 years, But I can tell you my wife will be running my ass out of the house probably before I ever pick up a drink, just because I'm gonna be hard to live with. That's just the way I revert back to that selfishness and self-centeredness, And I don't want that quality of life today, And I've learned this is the easiest hour of the day. I can come in here and tell you guys great things all day long, but it doesn't make a shit if I don't go home and I don't treat my family right, and my workers and my employees and the other people that are in my life that's important to me. So that's what I've learned, is to my own self be true. It's easy to get up there and say I'm fine, but I got to constantly. It doesn't matter if I'm drinking or not. I've got to work on trying to be a caring and giving person, and that's just something that I know I just always got to work on. It ain't going to get no better. It ain't got better in 22 years from not drinking, and I just assume that this is what I'm going to always have to do if I want this quality of life, and not go back to that pressure pot of life where I've got to pick up a drink to find some relief, So, I can't tell you all the gifts. You hear it all the time, man. I remember sitting in that treatment center when I was 30 years old, and I was thinking, man, I'd be better off dead. What am I going to do the rest of my life? How am I ever going to have any more fun? What am I going to do? And I look back at the life I got today and the family and all those gifts of sobriety, and I never could have guessed it. There ain't no way, and that's the beauty of these days, man. I got a young guy that I'm working with right now, and hell, he's like 21 and just got out of prison, and and trying to tell him, man, at 21, if you just come in here and grab a hold of this thing, you can have the world by the tail if you'll come in here and stay sober. I got sober at 30, and I had opportunities at 16, 18, 21, 25, and even getting sober at 30, I sit there and think, man, I wasted 10 years that I could have got this and the gifts of sobriety back then, but just to come in here and start the journey a day at a time, what a gift it's been, and and trying to carry the message. That's all I can tell you. That's what I do today. I sit down in that truck and I meet a couple guys a week, and we read that big book and we go to a meeting. and I just try to give back one at a time, But we said at the beginning of every meeting, our primary purpose, my primary purpose is to stay sober and help an alcoholic. God didn't save me to be up there running the damn tent revival, or I'm speaking at the pulpit, but speaking at the pulpit on Sundays or whatever. It's simply to sit down in that truck and read that big book with one guy at the time and go through them 12 steps. And if you get sobered up, to have him carry that message to another alcoholic, and that's just what we keep doing. And I found that as long as I keep doing that, as long as I've got that commitment to sit down and meet a guy or them couple guys and read that big book, I'm going to make an AA meeting that week. I'm going to at least say a couple prayers then, It's going to keep me centered. It gives me that commitment. Because, I got kids playing sports all over the place, and we got more work than we can do. And it's easy to get caught up in all that other stuff. Even though I ain't sitting around and hanging out, it doesn't matter if I ain't sitting around and hanging out in bars or if I'm sitting over and watching soccer game. If I'm not doing AA and giving back, it's all the same. Eventually it might happen a little quicker hanging out in bars, but either way, if I don't do this stuff to try to carry this spiritual life and try to live this life I can, eventually it'll catch up with me, and I've seen it. That's the thing from hanging around here. I've gained wisdom. That the wisdom's like trying to tell them new guys that I sponsor. When they say that stuff about relationships and all, how many of them guys that I sponsor is in a recovery house, and then they're all two of them's going to move out in 4 months, and about 2 or 3 of them, and we're serious about sobriety, and we're going to get our own place, and and it doesn't work out, and they all end up drunk, and the next one asks me that, and I go, I'm just telling you, you do what you want, but I'm just telling you from wisdom of watching this 100 times, or the same thing with the relationships, or whatever it is, that's the beauty of just in the short time that I've been in here, and that time of just watching how it unfolds, just sitting back and watching life unfold, you couldn't have told me when I walked in here that this sobriety would be the greatest gift that I've ever been given, but it has been. Absolutely without a doubt. Everything I got today, there's old reading January 6th in that 24-hour book that basically states, my sobriety is the absolute most important thing. Without that, I got nothing, And that's what I do know today. I know I'm powerless over alcohol. There's days that I'm not spiritual. I try to be, but but some days I'm better than others. Let's say that. But as long as I still know today that I'm powerless over alcohol, I always got a chance. I always got a chance at another day if I don't pick up that drink. So anyway, guys, I think I've burned up all my time up here, and I appreciate you letting me come share for you. And hey, thank you, guys.